Welcome back, my lords and ladies, to the Cast Beyond the Wall. We are your guide to all things Westerosi, and we're here to bring you a review, analysis, and fan v fan debate on each episode of HBO's Game of Thrones successor series, House of the Dragon. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today, after taking a couple of weeks off, unexpectedly, we are back with another special Rapid Fire and Blood Reactions minisode where my special co-host, Lauren Weingart, and I provide our immediate reactions to the latest episode of House of the Dragon. This week we're covering the House of the Dragon Season 1 finale, The Black Queen. We'll provide our thoughts on the episode before reflecting on the first season as a whole, and then we'll conclude by picking this week's winner, loser, and wild card player for the episode. In this segment, coming straight at you, is my special co-host. She's my sun and moon, coming to us from the beautiful city of Highgarden, allegedly. I think that's actually a lie. A lie for House Wine. Welcoming to the show, Lauren Weingart. Lauren, welcome back.
Good day, my lord.
Well, my lady, it's a great evening to speak with you about the Season 1 finale of House of the Dragon. I know we took a couple of weeks off, but it is great to have you back at the table.
Had to come back for the finale.
Yeah, I know you had to react in rapid fire fashion.
Oh, yeah.
Well, listeners, we're going to get into it here in just a moment, but I just wanted to remind you that you can keep up with all of our future social media posts on our Twitter page at cast_beyond_GOT, or you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/cast beyond the wall. And you probably should, frankly. Now, a couple of things. Firstly, if you're hearing Rapid Fire and Blood, this has been a subscriber exclusive. This is not published on a website anywhere. So chances are, if you're listening to this, it's very likely that you're already subscribed. So we got you there. Any future episodes, you'll be the first to hear. However, I do encourage you for more announcements to head over to those social media channels and follow us there. It's going to be a while probably before we're back with more House of the Dragon. So you might want to just follow those pages and see what kind of updates we can provide you. And another thing I'd like to say is if you've enjoyed Rapid Fire and Blood or all of the conversations we've had on the Cast Beyond the Wall this year, you can be of a huge help by giving us a rating and a review on Apple Podcast. If you have enjoyed the last, 10 plus episodes of the Cast Beyond the Wall, make sure to let us know before we go on this long hiatus. You have listened to all these episodes so far. The least you can do is give us 5 stars and leave us a little blurb and a review. And if you do want to contact us either before we wrap up our season discussion or sometime between seasons of House of the Dragon, you can send us an email to castbeyondthewall@live.com. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get to our very, very unfiltered, unprocessed reactions to this episode. We literally just finished watching it 15 minutes ago, so we have maybe made some mental notes, but you're getting very raw reactions here. So, Lauren Weingart, what did you think about The Black Queen?
I really dug this episode. Obviously, compared to last week's episode, that one was all about the reaction of the king's death in King's Landing, and this one is about the reaction of the king's death at Dragonstone. Pretty powerful. I like that there was a lot of comparisons in this episode. Like you have the scene where Otto Hightower meets with Daemon once again on that bridge, just like you see in in episode 2. I believe it was.
Yes.
And it
was a nice callback for sure.
Yeah, it was. I like that. It was like, oh, once again, they're butting heads. They're against each other and meeting at the same spot. And I even thought, I'm like, oh, is Rhaenyra going to show up in a dragon or something? And of course she did. But this time, instead of stopping Daemon, she's there to back him up.
Well, she still stops him.
I guess she does. Yeah. I don't know. It was just, it's a little different, but I did like.
The context is certainly different, but it did play out very similarly where Daemon's like, let me just cut this dude's head off.
That's true. And she stopped him. I did notice that.
And she shows up with her dragon and's like.
It's like, Otto, can't you learn? They're just going to show up with a dragon.
So what were maybe like a couple of your favorite things about the episode?
Well, okay, I wouldn't say my favorite thing, but the thing that stood out was, man, this show really likes to show you gruesome birth scenes.
Yeah.
Which lead into another comparison. Obviously, it was crazy that she had just learned this news about her father and having to deal with, on the brink of war and like but then she's got a war with her body, and then she had to, lay her baby to rest just like her father did. So that was another comparison. I kind of like that.
It's some thematic symmetry. Her father dies and then she gives birth, but then the baby dies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, this season, man, so many grisly birth scenes. I definitely, this was another one where I was like, ugh.
You think it can't get worse, and then somehow it does.
They make it worse. Yeah. Hopefully, I don't know. I'd like to think that we don't do this again in season 2, but I think that
it's the first scene.
Listen,
gonna open up.
I have generally, as listeners who have been tuning in each week may recall, I have generally been on the side of the creatives in terms of how they've chosen to brutally present childbirth, death in childbirth, the gory awfulness of childbirth. Especially because I feel like it's something that's been, generally speaking, underrepresented on the film and television.
It's true. I mean, I think that's the point, is this is something that is just, it's the realism of how gruesome
it could be.
It could be.
Or it was in the medieval times.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially in the medieval times like this is supposed to be. So I don't know. It's like, it's hard to watch, but I think it's supposed to be hard to watch.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think overall this is a very effective, just my quick thoughts on this. I think this is a very effective season finale. I think the way they end it definitely makes kind of supports the theory that we are watching one giant prologue to the Dance of Dragons, because the Civil War that has been building this whole season, book readers will know as the Dance of Dragons. It's a historical event that is even mentioned in Game of Thrones a couple of times. So, this is a pretty big one. But the whole season, you're like, all right, when's it going to start? When's this thing going to go? Mm-hmm. And really, the first act of war does not occur. The first direct act of war does not occur until the closing moments of today's episode. And so I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it really, in a lot of ways, similar to Game of Thrones season 1, where the War of the Five Kings only happens because Ned Stark loses his head in episode 9. This war only starts, I mean, obviously there's all these different factors that are contributing, but the act of war is, we see Aemond take out I should probably write this kid's name. The middle of the strong boys is totally devoured along with his dragon.
Luke, I think.
Luke. Yes, Luke
which is like the most like normal name.
Did you catch that there was a Lord Grover?
Oh yeah, Grover.
Lord Grover, name drop, who is the Lord of Riverrun. If I understand correctly. So that was kind of funny. But anyway. So I think overall effective finale. It kind of puts a pin in the story we've seen up so far. I do admire that we've seen, like you kind of highlighted, and I think Miguel Sapochnik did this in the sort of behind the scenes. This definitely plays as a part 2 to last week's episode. Last week was very, very focused on Alicent's point of view and everything that happens in King's Landing as you laid out. But this episode is very focused on Rhaenyra's family. A couple of other things I noticed. So I've known this, the way that these families have been labeled, the greens and the blacks, just because of been in the internet conversation. But I think this is the first episode where they specifically start calling the high towers the greens, and then the Team Rhaenyra is the blacks. So it's the blacks and the greens. It's sort of the two sides, if you will. So, but yeah, I think we are ready to go on the Dance of Dragons in season 2, whenever it may come. At the end of the day, I do think that the season is going to feel like a prologue. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's actually a feature, not a bug. But if you were expecting a war with dragons, you really don't get too much dragon action in this particular season.
Not in this season, but I think in this episode we had probably the most dragon action that we've
yeah.
we've had, and which was really cool. And I thought that was really it was a really cool scene when he landed in Storm's End, and it was like raining and storming, and then it
A storm at Storm's End, you don't say.
Oh, a storm at Storm's End. How beautiful.
The first time we've seen Storm's End from the exterior by the way.
Yeah, which was really cool.
By the way, just a reminder for listeners who might not be familiar, Storm's End is sort of like the castle for the Baratheon household. So it was talked about in Game of Thrones quite a bit. It was very important to obviously the Baratheons, Robert and Stannis Baratheon, I think, was actually the Lord of Storm's End for a long time. But anyway,
Yeah, it was really cool. Like when he showed up and to see how big. I mean, we see him before, but I really got the sense of how big Vhagar was in this scene and in the last scene too. So I thought that was really cool.
Vhagar's like 5 times.
He
the
looked
size
like
of
Godzilla, like in the with the lightning in the storm. I thought that was really cool, and I thought this episode did really good setting up the next season. I definitely feel like Aemond was just trying to scare Luke. You know, I don't think he really actually meant to.
You don't think he meant to?
No, I could tell that because you can even hear him. He's like, "No, Vhagar, no!" And then he and then you could see his face at the very end, and I think it was kind of like a surprise face, like, "Oh, I was just trying to scare him. I didn't mean to."
Oh, whoops! You mean when I play with my giant dragon, bad things happen?
Exactly. Well, I mean, you just started a war. So
that is. I mean, as if the usurping Rhaenyra was not already like a clear, hey, we're not on the same team, guys. We're taking power for ourselves. If that doesn't start the war, I think the death of the Queen's son is kinslaying. Aemond is a kinslayer now, by the way.
Well, she was trying to keep the peace, and then you see this, tension between Rhaenyra and Daemon. I mean, Daemon's ready for war, and Rhaenyra's trying to kind of.
Well, they're definitely trying to. I love the idea that we, on both sides of the fence, we see that it's the women, the queens in the room trying to say that the men are all like, yeah, let's go to war. Let's take these mofos out. Like, let's assassinate people. And they're both on both sides. They're like, wait. This is really the only way to handle this scenario. I think we can figure out a way to do it without murdering other family members, essentially. It was a nice attempt, but it was doomed to fail. As we'll see in season 2, it looks like. Lauren, would you say that this was a pretty satisfying conclusion for season 1 of House of the Dragon?
I think so. I mean, obviously it ends on a big cliffhanger, I mean, because this is kind of what we've been waiting for, the Dance of the Dragons, the setup of this war. And I think, like you said, like this whole season is kind of like a prologue, and looking back.
We basically get all the personal, we're going to understand the personal stakes of these battles way more now. And I think my hunch is we're also probably done with the time jumps, at least multiple year time jumps, as far as I can tell. And, I still need to digest it and think on it a little more before, and I'm sure I'll have more thoughts in our in-depth discussion that we'll post on Wednesday. But I think I'm okay with the time jumps in retrospect, because it's a lot of small moments that don't necessarily add up to a specific thing. It's not an equation. But it does add a lot more context to the decisions that these characters end up making throughout the second half of the season, particularly the last 3 episodes, which I really appreciate. These moments in the last 3 episodes would not have landed had we not had the first, 7, even though there's tons of time jumps, and those small plot threads don't always add up to anything super cool.
Yeah, in hindsight, the time jumps do now make sense. I kind of figured that would happen. It's kind of like when you're trying to catch someone up. It's like, okay, here's the high points. Here's what you need to know. All the other stuff is just kind of, background noise. But yes, I think in the second season, I don't think there's really going to be any time jumps. Like, this is setting up for.
We've already got the backstory.
Yeah, exactly. The whole season was pretty much the backstory.
Well, Lauren, anything else in particular you want to call out about this episode? It sounds like you really liked it. I really liked it as well. I'm a fan. Again, I really just truthfully need to digest this episode a little more, but I would say it's a nice period to the end of the first sentence in a much longer paragraph.
Yeah, in a book.
Yes. A book titled Fire and Blood, perhaps.
Oh, yeah, good title. Yeah, no, not really. I just remember I really liked when she got the crown placed on her. I thought that was really powerful.
Oh, yeah, great moment.
Yeah.
Great moment. Like a really sort of like stepping into power sort of moment.
So
and
I like that.
It was it was a nice touch, too, that our Eric, I don't know, listeners can correct me. I believe it's Eric with an E, not Arik with an A, who is the one who defected and went to Team Rhaenyra. I like how she brought Viserys' crown. Meanwhile, Aegon the Second is wearing Aegon the Conqueror, the Aegon who came over from Valyria and conquered Westeros. So Aegon the Second is wearing his crown. Really clever when Otto lays it out there. He's like, yeah, he's got the king's name, the conqueror's name. He's got the conqueror's crown. He's got the conqueror's sword. He's been trained. He's like, he's got everything you need. So like Otto really has been grooming him.
Oh yeah, he's
specifically
been waiting for this moment.
But he's a puppet. It's crazy because Aegon himself doesn't actually want to be the king.
No.
Or at least he didn't. I kind of wonder if he's going to 180 once he's like, wait, this is what power feels like.
I know. I think in that moment in the last episode, he was like, kind of like looking around like, wait a minute, this is kind of cool.
He lifts the sword up in the air.
He's like, yeah, I'm a rock star. But yeah, he's not going to take it seriously, though. I don't think. I don't think so. He's going to fail brutally.
Well, Lauren, again, listeners, want to remind you, we're going to have a much, much, much more in-depth conversation that'll publish on Wednesday this week. That'll do a scene-by-scene recap. But Lauren, before we wrap up, we have to pick this week's winner, loser, and wild card player. Or who do you choose?
Loser would be Luke and his dragon.
Yeah.
Amex.
Luke is dead.
Because they just... What if we...
Chomped in like one bite.
You know what? We didn't really see him die. What if we find out...
He looked pretty
He was pretty high in the sky.
He's pretty high in the... If the dragon chomped it and get him, I'm pretty sure
the dragon, like, helps him down. I mean, I know the dragon's in 2, but like he's able to like hold on to it and then he jumps off.
I know this is a fantasy show, Lauren, but you're really pushing, this is not Rings of Power
where
stuff like that.
I didn't see him die, all right? I will put the wild card still as Aemond.
Aemond is your wild card?
Yeah, because, I mean...
Aemond the Kinslayer.
Yeah, the Kinslayer. I mean, come on.
I mean,
who else? I mean, if he can kill his own kin, who wouldn't he?
Anything to make him sound more anime, because he is an anime character in the show.
For sure.
Even the way he was, like the scene when Luke walks into the Great Hall to meet with the Lord Baratheon and Storm's End. Even the way he was standing, I was like, God, he's in such an anime pose. He's got he's got his cape and one leg sticking out, and he's just standing there, and he's like giving him the eye. I was like, oh my God, this is so anime.
It's so true. Winner. There's no winners when you're playing the Game of Thrones.
All right, so I think Aemond is the winner because this is what he's wanted the entire time. He's literally been training to go to war since he got the dragon. Because I mean, by that point, his mom, Alicent, and Otto had already planted all these seeds of like one day where the Rhaenyra's family is going to come for us, and you've got to be ready, So he has literally been battling and training very hard. He has the biggest dragon, Vhagar. I don't think, and I don't know if he cares about perception. He's not going to be the king. He knows it. So he's like, yeah, at least I can have my vengeance. So that's number one. This week's loser, yeah, Luke loses. I mean, I don't like to, usually I don't like the winners and losers to be quite so obvious, but I mean, I would even go as far as to say Luke and honestly just the blacks in general. Mm-hmm. Because Rhaenyra did not want to go to war, but now she has no choice. So, yeah, Luke for sure, but let's just say the blacks in general, because a war is a-coming. Wild card, I think Daemon is meant to be the wild card this week because it seems he has pledged himself to Rhaenyra and does, as far as we've seen, has fallen in line with what she wants, just barely. Just barely. The second that guy is given any like extra room on the leash, he is gonna go like crazy town.
Oh, for sure.
So wild card, like especially now that we lost Luke, it's gonna be a bloodbath.
Yeah.
Hey, do you think? Here's a question for you. Again, we have not read Fire and Blood, so I want to make sure it's out there. I feel like the show has already telegraphed that this is gonna happen, but do you think we're gonna get a Daemon versus Aemond fight.
Yes. I know, because they remind me so much of each other. Obviously, like they.
Oh, that was very intentional.
Yeah, it is intentional, but they just like they look like each other too, and like just they have like both like this wild card essence to them, but like their choices are just so different though.
They're both second sons. They both they both believe that their brothers are going to be terrible rulers. They think they can do it better.
Yeah.
And I think they both got a little bit of bloodlust in there. And there's even that scene in episode 8 at the dinner whenever Daemon steps in to stop the squabbling, and Aemond just looks at him, and it's almost like they do a nod, like game see game.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is I can't wait to see when they both go Super Saiyan on their dragons and do a Kamehameha.
Yes.
Because it's going to happen. And
Yes.
that long flowing hair they both have, perfect. And especially if you add in the thunder and the lightning like we saw this week, anime. It's going to be fantastic.
Give them what the people want, and that's what we want.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining me today, but not just today, for hopping on the Cast Beyond the Wall to do this. I threw this idea at you towards the beginning of the season. I was like, what if we just got on and talked about whatever was on our mind, like immediately after watching it? And you're like, sure, I guess.
No, it's been fun. It's kind of interesting right after you watch a show and you're still kind of processing, and usually you kind of like have a couple days and you prepare, but it kind of is nice to just like, shoot the wind, like, and just like,
Yeah, it's like shooting the breeze.
Shooting the breeze and just like talking about it right after you see it. Because we honestly, people like we don't even like really talk about it that much until we get on here. So it's like pretty fresh.
No, I had no idea what Lauren thought. The episode ended. We took a break where we both got water and went to the bathroom, and then we stepped and sat down at these microphones. That is how raw this is. So our takes are definitely, not super organized, but I think the goal of this little series was, hey, we want to get you guys some content as soon as possible. Number one. Number two, what is the vibe of the episode is really, because there are some times when the vibe, after you finish an episode, it vibes one way. And after you think about it for a couple of days, you vibe a different way, So this should be able to, I think my goal is just to kind of give you guys something to chew on before we get to our in-depth discussion on Wednesday. Lauren, thank you so much for being a part of it with me this year. It's been fun.
Of course.
And listeners, don't you fret. We have more content, more podcasts coming to you on the Cast Beyond the Wall feed and on goodtrashmedia.com. If you want to keep up with more of our episodes, including our in-depth discussion covering the season finale, which we'll be publishing this Wednesday, you can follow us on Twitter at cast_beyond_GOT or on Facebook at facebook.com/cast beyond the wall. Lauren Weingart, where can people keep up with you online?
You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Video Peach Productions.
Awesome. And people of the internet can find me on Twitter, tweeting about all sorts of things, including video games, television, and film, at C Masters Talk. That is letter C Masters Talk. I also have my film review and analysis podcast, The Cinematic Schematic, which is the official podcast of a website that I run called thecinematropolis.com. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to this week's Rapid Fire and Blood Reactions. Once again, remind you, join us again on Wednesday when we take a closer look at the episode with the scene-by-scene breakdown.